Still on hold. Start broadcasting. Okay. Good morning. Good afternoon to some of you folks online. Thank you very much. This is again another great day to celebrate the draft guidance CSA release, and join me to welcome my speakers and subject matter expert from the FIXA team and from Boston Scientific, Ray Murphy, fellow engineer global software in Boston Scientific, and he's from Cork. Thank you, Ray, for joining us.
You're welcome.
And also Mr. From Cincinnati, Ohio, from me actually, and he is at Johnson & Johnson and also a FIXA team member for a very long time. So again, thank you, An and Ray, for joining me. This is Khalid Musali, Executive Vice President, and I've been a FIXA member for close to 5+ years too. Really, this webinar is to focus on computer software assurance risk framework. And it's only 30. I promise you, I will not talk too much like I usually do. And I know Alan is laughing. Really, what we're going to talk about is on the risk and what it means for the draft guidance. But before I get into the agenda, I just wanted to share with you the CSA that we're planning on doing. So today we're doing computer. Will be trying the intended dig a little deeper, and I will have at the time. I cannot announce their name now, just in case they win the lottery, they won't be able to attend the webinar. And then the second important thing that I want to share is the live from Washington, D.C. And this is where the entire FIXA team will be meeting in the FDA or at the MDIC office. We're still not sure when we will be, but for October 21st, we will be in Washington, D.C. And then finally, anywhere you see recorded, please click on the link and we'll show you. Oops. Okay, Khalid. Sorry. Click too fast here. The link, you will find all the webinar that we've done together and with FIXA team and our clients as well. All right. So again, we're not going to talk too much. The guidance, it's a great guidance, so, but the idea is to allow for Johnson & Johnson and Boston Scientific to share a little bit about their journey and also their perspective, what they started, because both organization, and again, I'm not gonna generalize, it's not the entire organizations, the organization and Ray have implemented CSA, right? Really what they're gonna share is what they thought the guidance is and what it came up with. It's a great thing. So we'll let you listen to them. I always like to give credit to the entire FIXA team. As you can see now, this is not a CDRH focus. It's not a medical device group. We've got biotech, pharma, from various organizations joining the FIXA team. Maybe I'll make a note here. Many folks are asking the FIXA team. Okay, it is a cult. It's just a group of folks that got together to come up with the recommendation for the draft guidance. I cannot say you can join or not join, but as long as you continue to follow us, you know exactly what we're really talking about. Your feedback, your input is always welcome. and will be considered as a great input to the draft guidance, future guidance, or any future white paper that will be out from the FICSA team. Fine. CSA draft, I just really wanted to highlight a few things, and this is based on the comments that I've been seeing submitted to the guidance. When the final guidance, the scope, it's very important to really read the scope. When final, this guidance is intended to provide recommendation regarding computer software assurance for computers or automated data processing systems used as a production or the quality system. Look at the scope. It's very important. This is what's really in scope. I'm going to drop all the way down. This guidance does not provide recommendation for the design verification or validation of requirements specified in 21 CF. Third, okay, SIMD, SAMD. I just want to clarify that. However, can we apply it? Well, we'll see what Ron and Ray are going to say. Also very important, this guidance is not intended to provide description of all software validation principles. Guess what? Because we already have one, the GPSV, right? So it's really important to take a look at those little details, the little fine line within the guidance. Okay, so what Khaled is going to do is stop talking and turn it to Mr. Ray Murphy. Ray, again, thank you very much for joining us, and we'd love to hear your perspective, your organization perspective on the risk framework for CSA.
Yeah, thanks, Khaled, for giving me the opportunity to speak here today. I mean, it's a pleasure, as always, to be speaking on a topic I feel passionate about with two esteemed colleagues. As you know, I've been a FICSA member since 2016, and I'll take you through my interpretation of the draft CSA guidance as it pertains to risk. Like before I launch into my few slides, I think it is worth mentioning, you know, and giving the FDA a call out here, as I believe the guidance is truly transformative and will promote the use of automation in our industry, which will ultimately improve patient outcomes. So big call out to them. So you can move on to the next slide, Khaled, please. Like we've implemented much of the guidance, as Khaled said, at Boston Scientific, and I'll take you through how we've implemented at a high level in the few minutes that I have. So we begin by assessing the system by looking at its intended use. It's all about intended use at the end of the day. And here what we perform what you could call an initial triage of risk. We determine, amongst other things, if the system is in the quality system or not. Are there any other regulations in place, such as SOX, and we determine if ERAS is in scope. If a system is determined to be in the quality system, we typically would conduct another layer of risk assessment by breaking the system down into its various features. So, for example, a CAPA system would have features like non-conformance initiation or non-conformance approval, etc. The guidance suggests that for high-risk features, you should use scripted testing, keeping in mind that this can be supplemented with unscripted testing techniques such as exploratory testing or error guessing and ad hoc testing. For those features that are not classified as high risk, unscripted testing alone can be applied. Next slide, Khaled, please. The guidance classifies risk into two distinct groups, high and not high, and it introduces the concept of software that either directly or indirectly impacts product quality and ultimately patient safety. And it provides clear examples of what it considers to be high risk. At Boston Scientific, we've broken the risk categories into three, high, medium, or low, because we feel it has that little bit more granularity that enables us to classify the features better. We don't, nor do we think it's required to create an intended use statement for each and every feature. We keep that at a high level as the system as a whole. So essentially, we assign a category to each feature, and this will support the determination of what type of testing we will conduct. I've deliberately used the word support as you'll see my final slide, because critical thinking must be applied when deciding what validation techniques should be used. We try to avoid a one-size-fits-all approach, which we'll see later. Next slide, Khaled, please. The breaking of a system into its various features for us should not be confused with conducting a more detailed and final risk analysis. So this is the final layer in our overall risk assessment. This assists us in determining potential issues with the system, which can guide with design, development, and implementation activities. Once a risk has been identified, we establish a mitigation, and we close out the process by ensuring that that mitigation has been implemented in full. Next slide, Khaled, please. So I mentioned critical thinking earlier and its importance within validation planning. The existing general principles of software validation, as Khaled mentioned earlier, states that validation efforts should be commensurate with risk. But I believe this guidance goes a lot further and asks us to look at the bigger picture. We need to consider everything from vendor selection at the start to where the system is being implemented to the end, and everything in between. We should factor in what we've learned from the vendor assessment. I mean, after all, if the vendor has a great quality system with comprehensive testing, then where's the value in us repeating all of that testing again? The answer is there's no value in it. So you need to consider things like that. Similarly, if all the outputs of a system are fully verified, then reduced validation can be conducted, as the risk of these errors being produced in outputs is mitigated to an acceptable level. Likewise, if the software is continuously monitored, then less testing can be conducted. And finally, the guidance says that we should take credit for all informal testing that's being conducted. This testing, helps us build confidence that the system is working as intended. Like those four activities there are all risk-based activities over and above what I mentioned earlier. And by taking a risk-based approach, we can scale our validation efforts appropriately. Obviously, we'll test areas of high risk more rigorously while leveraging information where it makes sense. And we really believe that this reduces validation burden, while at the same time making system implementation better, and we can stand over it more and have more confidence that it works. So in a nutshell, that's how we've implemented risk based on this draft guidance.
Good. Just one quick question for you, Ray. I know that you started the implementation of CSA way before the guidance just got released, right?
Yeah.
From an organization perspective, from quality organization perspective, what are the consensus? Do you see a great difference from when initially you started that journey and what you're seeing today in the final draft?
It's quite similar. I mean, we were fortunate enough, we'll say, to hear the likes of Cisco and yourself standing up and preaching or to us that this is how the world is going to look like in the future. That this new future aligns with current regulation. That it was nothing new here. It's just, and I don't like using the word especially, it's just applying common sense to your validation approach. So that gave us the confidence to take and run with this new with these new principles that were being talked about. Was it an easy sell at the start? No, because it was so new. But as momentum has built, and now that the draft guidance is out, it's a lot easier to sell. And I guess prior to this, you had the likes of GAMP and Gartner, industry, good standards industry, preaching that this is the way forward.
You mean these guys right here, right? Good.
Those guys right there, exactly.
Awesome, awesome. All right. Shame on me. I did not mention a couple of few housekeeping items before I turn it back to Ron. We are recording this session within the next 40 hours. You can get it, right? We also have a quick survey. Please submit it. And if you have any questions, please type your questions. And if we don't get to them by the end of this call, I promise you we will respond to them. So, and also there's two handouts in on there somewhere under the handout too, where you will have the draft guidance and also where to go and submit the comments. All right, Mr. Sherdang, we would love to hear your perspective, and of course Johnson and Johnson.
All right, thank you, and good day to everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. I have like a couple of disclaimers I have to give. One is the expressions, essentially what I'm going to tell you here, those are my opinions, not necessarily representing the opinion of Johnson & Johnson. I do not have slides for you because I didn't have enough time to clear them with the legal and communications. It still allows me to speak. Also, the things that I say here, again, you obviously, whatever you decide to implement, again, consult with your, again, with your quality and compliance organizations. Again, I'm just gonna share based on things that we have done and some of my opinion. My other disclaimer is advice is as good as the price that you pay for it. Since mine is free, it's probably not very good, but I'll give it to you anyway.
Oh, come on.
Or maybe I have like a better version is advice is as good as the price that you pay for it. Since mine is priceless, you cannot afford it, I'll just give it to you. How is that?
Sounds good.
So, again, I don't have slides for you, but some of the things that Ray has presented, like on his slides, it's similar to what we're doing, which is there is a little bit, particularly on the topic of risk management, there is a shift from doing a risk assessment, which historically I think most companies have done like an FMEA type of thing. So it was just assessing risk and then having risk priority numbers like an RPN and using something similar to an FMEA to pivoting towards risk management. And I know like it sounds like nuance, but the reality is in the business of risk and risk management, there is not like one silver bullet that fixes everything. We typically have layers of like how we manage risk. And so one of them, as Ray also said, is you do an initial risk assessment and you determine, is this system or application that I have, is it GXP, right? Essentially falls within what this guidance is. And if the answer is no, if it is just like a business process application that maybe it is Sarbanes-Oxley related, well, then probably the FDA doesn't care about it, right? So you do that initial risk assessment, determine is this thing GXP, and then based on the intended use, again, you might have like different categories that then helps you to manage your process downstream. But then another big component of risk management is actually testing, right? And with the revised guidance, there are like at least 5 options for testing. And I think historically, our industry has been very much focused on doing the very heavy scripting. So is like in the guidance, I think it is referred to as the robust scripting. So that tells you like step by step and click by click on how to do things. And that is very time consuming because in order to get a script right that people can actually follow it, it takes a lot of effort between the technical writers and the subject matter experts, and there is a lot of back and forth that goes on. And again, it doesn't mean that that's the only way for doing testing. So there are 2 types of scripted. So there is robust and limited scripted. And then you have 3 types of unscripted. And I think one important thing that we have found as we've been in this journey and doing test and learns and rolling this out is that sometimes people understand or mistake the unscripted to the undocumented. Right? And there is always some kind of, because you need to ask yourself this question. If you're going to do testing, but you don't have an objective, right? So you don't know what you're testing for, and you don't have some kind of like acceptance criteria that says, okay, this is how I know if I have succeeded or not, then you need to ask yourself, like, what is the point of even doing that? So you're just like playing around. So in some cases that's okay, but if the intent is to leverage that as part of these layers of risk management to pivoting towards risk management. And I know like it sounds like nuance, but the reality is in the business of risk and risk management, there is not like one silver bullet that fixes everything. We typically have layers of like how we manage risk. And so one of them, as Ray also said, is you do an initial risk assessment and you determine, is this system or application that I have, is it GXP, right? Essentially falls within what this guidance is. And if the answer is no, if it is just like a business process application that maybe it is Sarbanes-Oxley related, well, then probably the FDA doesn't care about it, right? So you do that initial risk assessment to determine, is this thing GXP? And then based on the intended use, again, you might have like different categories that then helps you to manage your process downstream. But then another big component of risk management is actually testing, right? And with the revised guidance, there are like at least 5 options for testing. And I think historically, our industry has been very much focused on doing the very heavy scripting. So it's like in the guidance, I think it is referred to as the robust scripting. So that tells you like step by step and click by click on how to do things. And that is very time consuming because in order to get a script right that people can actually follow it, it takes a lot of effort between the technical writers and the subject matter experts, and there is a lot of back and forth that goes on. And again, it doesn't mean that that's the only way for doing testing. So there are 2 types of scripted. So there is robust and limited scripted, and then you have 3 types of unscripted. And I think one important thing that we have found as we've been in this journey and doing test and learns and rolling this out is that sometimes people understand or mistake the unscripted to the undocumented, right? And there is always some kind of, because you need to ask yourself this question. If you're going to do testing, but you don't have an objective, right? So you don't know what you're testing for, and you don't have some kind of like acceptance criteria that says, okay, this is how I know if I have succeeded or not, then you need to ask yourself, like, what is the point of even doing that? So you're just like playing around. So in some cases that's okay, but if the intent is to leverage that as part of these, if in the end you're going to be testing everything. So you might take like a slightly different approach where, yes, you understand what your risks are, and then also you choose what is the best approach for testing. So are you going to do like robust scripting? And that usually again is optimal, for example, if you're doing CI/CD type of development, because you need somewhat of a robust script because you're going to be automating that testing. So like you need enough detail to automate. But if you're doing limited scripted testing, your testers need to be somewhat familiar with the system. If you have like brand new testers that have never seen the application and you give them limited instruction, you have 2 possibilities, at least 2 possibilities. One is they're going to find all kinds of issues that are not real, or they're going to find nothing because they don't know what they're doing. So there is a place for a lot of these, and again, like, how to best utilize. So that's essentially is like, again, when it comes to risk, it's really pivoting from just doing a risk assessment to really doing risk management. And again, it taking advantage of all the downstream and also upstream controls that you have, because it is really like it's a combination of things that help you to manage risk. It's not like I evaluate each one of my requirements and then you do like your risk assessment, but instead you're looking at the bigger picture, is like from end to end, so like for the entire life cycle of the system, what is the best way to manage that risk? So with that, I'm going to pause here because otherwise we're going to run out of time, and see if there are any questions from colleague for me to specifically address, and then we'll go from there.
Yes, sir. We got a few questions. Well, obviously we got less than 5 minutes. Question to Ray specifically. What are the types of testing you used for medium low risk features, scripted or unscripted? So this is a yes or no question.
For non-high, we are using a mixture of ad hoc and unscripted testing. a mixture of exploratory testing and error guessing is quite popular.
Great, thank you. Here's a question, and any of you gentlemen could answer. Generally, the security privileges assigned or configured in COTS software, could these be classified as medium, if not impacting product quality, patient safety directly, and rigor of testing could be unscripted but documented? It's unscripted.
So the answer is yes. I'm sorry. So I'll give the perspective on the direction that we're going to. So we are, our approach is actually not to assign risk to individual requirements, because our approach has been, we have requirements and we test them to make sure they work. So why would we spend time debating, is it high, is it medium, or is it low? Because also we are not tying, let's say a high risk, you have to do robust scripting. In a medium risk, you do limited scripting. And if it is low risk, you do ad hoc. So for us is we have requirements. We don't bother to, again, to go through like, is it a high, medium, or low? Are we going to test it or not? And usually the answer is yes, we're going to be testing it. And then the question then becomes, what is the best test approach? And so let's say my testers are very familiar with the system. It may be something that we already have been using for a while. So limited scripting is conducive for that because they have familiarity with it. So I don't need to give a lot of instructions and I can do it. And I can say, hey, again, do you need screenshots? Which is like historically industry was like kind of almost like addicted to it. And the answer is, again, screenshots should be like very seldomly used. So like a pass fail will be enough. And so, but if my testers are brand new, they have never done it, maybe I'm doing like a user acceptance testing and my users have never seen the application, I probably need more detail than maybe like than you would do for limited testing. So again, it has to be enough detail that they can actually execute it. What we have found is that when doing limited scripted testing, we tend to find more issues during testing, which is good. Again, you want to find issues before your system goes live or goes into production. And sometimes when you have very rigid scripts, you actually miss on things that are sometimes like right there, but you just don't see because you're so following your script so tightly that it gives you like no opportunity to see what is like adjacent. So I know like long answer, but yes, there are like different ways of doing it. Not
yeah, your time is up.
That is right or wrong.
Awesome. One good question. I think I kind of like it. When you do informal testing, are you counting testing done in developing environment, or are you still making sure it is done in a qualified pre-production environment? This is a little bit of a tricky question.
It is tricky. I would say like there is kind of like, obviously you have to apply some critical thinking there, but the thing is when it also depends on the complexity of the system. But if you have multiple developers, they're all working in your dev environment and things are still changing every day, and maybe you just have like some mock data. Sometimes like you want people to try things out, but at that point it's just too early to really try to leverage it. So usually when things get to a QA kind of environment, or then things are a little bit more controlled, you're not having as many changes, because if you test it and say, okay, I tested and it's good, but tomorrow somebody goes in and changes the code and now like it's something else, then kind of like essentially that was again just like a wasted opportunity. So like you need to look again what makes more sense, like what is the best place to do it.
Yeah, I think the second part of this question is because I feel that the industry in general think that the unscripted testing exploratory is only happening in a development environment, right? So I think some clarification is required here. Ray, what's your thought on that?
It's very much used. Like we're using it like I would say a lot. So unscripted isn't undocumented. It's just that you're giving your testers that little bit less information But there are many benefits of that. They will try different ways of meeting the test objective. It cuts down hugely on protocol generation errors. I mean, Ron, you touched on it. I make a joke about it sometimes, that sometimes we test the protocol more than what we do the system under test to make sure it's bug free or error free when we run it, and that's just wrong. So we certainly would use, and I'm a big advocate of unscripted testing. It doesn't mean undocumented.
Okay, gentlemen, I think we've reached the bottom of the hour here. I know 30 minutes is not usually that fast, but it is quick. Yes, we might increase it next time, but I think 30 minutes is enough. Thank you very, very much. We've got some questions. We will send answers to those questions, very much related to the risk, low, medium, high, leveraging vendors, etc. But we will respond to those. Myself, Ray, and Ron will just answer together, and we'll post them also on the site. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us. And just a reminder, please keep that date, October 21st, town hall with the entire FIXA team. It is not going to be 30 minutes. It's definitely going to be over an hour or plus. So again, thank you so much, and we'll talk to you next Friday at 9 a.m. Central. Take care.
Thanks, Khaled.
All right.
Take care.
Thank you so much.